Hi, welcome back everybody. The Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein has ordered cash Paymaster services to repay 316 million rand to the South African Social Security Agency. The money was irregularly paid to CPS in 2014. This was after it claimed to have enrolled more grant beneficiaries than for which it had been contracted to provide services for. So CPS appealed a 2018 North Gauteng High Court ruling ordering it to pay back the money, but the Supreme Court of Appeal dismissed the case with costs. Executive Director of Corruption Watch, David Lewis, is in studio to talk to us about this. Good to have you. Thanks, David, for coming in.
Thanks, Dan.
So who is the victor in this case? SASSA, Corruption Watch, or the South African public?
Well, I'd like to think the South African public. I mean, we are the immediate victors, I have to say. It was our application originally, and we were that was the decision that was appealed against. But, you know, 316 million rand plus about, I would imagine, about 120 million rand interest, or maybe more, has to be paid back to SASSA. And I hope that this time they use it for the benefit of the beneficiaries rather than the intended beneficiaries, rather than, you know, wasted on this kind of unlawful expenditure. SASSA is the victor in the sense that it gets the money back, but SASSA paid the money in the first place, and we still don't really know exactly why they paid the money, and this is really the sort of question that the law enforcement, the criminal justice authorities should be investigating.
Which they're not. Is this a part of any investigation?
No, it isn't, as far as I know. I mean, you know, when we were part of the applicants that had the original 10 billion rand SASSA contract overturned, we started nagging the Hawks and the NPA then to investigate it, and naturally they didn't. Although, interestingly, the US justice authorities investigated it because the holding company of CPS, Net One, is listed in the United States. They investigated it, and in my information has got quite far in the investigation, but they couldn't continue with it because they got no cooperation at the time from the South African authorities. But you have to look, we can only take constitutional and administrative law reviews. We can't investigate a criminal case, much less prosecute a criminal case of this dimension. But persistently, the judges have said in the Constitutional Court, and again yesterday, that you've got to understand why these irregularities were committed. Why is it that basic errors were made in awarding massive contracts of this sort, and they were all made in the favor of one company, CPS?
Yeah.
So this cries out for further investigation, but it's a long time down the road.
It is a long time down the road, and going back to 2014, SASSA agreed, as you said, to pay CPS the money. So it was Corruption Watch that actually took this forward and said, something's not right here. Who found out that the money was actually fraudulently paid and took it to court? Was it Corruption Watch?
Yes.
So
we noticed in an Auditor General's report this irregular payment of 317 million rand. And we looked into it and made a deeper inquiry and could not find a reasonable explanation for why this money was paid. And every explanation, and it was like wringing blood out of a stone to get the explanations in the first place, every explanation struck us as flawed. So we've been batting away at this thing now for 5 years. And I think it demonstrates that there are things that can be done about these kind of expenditures, and I hope that now other companies doing business with the state will think twice about engaging in dodgy contracts and cutting corners or worse, because not only will their contract be cancelled, but this, which is one of the first times that I think this has happened, they'll be ordered to pay the money back. And so, you know, they now, as I say, owe close to 500 million rand to SASSA, and I hope to the South African public.
Any appeal pending, do you think?
I don't think they can. I mean, you know, they could theoretically try and go to the Constitutional Court, but there are no constitutional issues, and I'm absolutely certain the Constitutional Court would not hear this.
Was it clear in the arguments of the circumstances under which CPS was paid Who agreed at SASSA and under what circumstances?
Well, the person who agreed was a former CEO of SASSA, Virginia Peterson, and her explanations were completely unconvincing. But I am convinced, and I think so are many others, that you look at these payments, you look at these contracts, you look at the number of irregularities, all of them favored CPS. And CPS seemed to have, if you like to use the current term, captured SASSA, basically. And that's what needs to be investigated. And I remember in the Constitutional Court case, the judges said, in striking down that contract, that you have to look underneath these irregularities. You have to ask why. Because I think the term that they used in that case was irregularities may betoken corruption. In other words, it may not just be coincidental that all of these irregularities happen. It may not be just a foolish error in a 10 billion rand contract that caused these to happen. Maybe there is good reason why SASSA committed these errors, and the Ministry of Social Development under, at the time, Batabile Dlamini, committed these apparent errors and irregularities. And the question that is begged was there some consideration for persistently erring in favor of SASSA? And that's the great unanswered, in favor of CPS, and that's the great unanswered question.
Yeah. You know, when we go back to March and we look at CPS actually saying that they're going to appeal this, and, you know, what may they have had to go ahead, and the confidence that they had to actually take this forward with an agreement that they actually never had?
Well, you know, you might say that about many appeals. They delay things for a year. They're up against an organisation, although our lawyers were very generous to us, and I'm pleased that costs have been awarded so at least the lawyers can be paid.
Yeah.
They have very, very deep pockets, and so they can carry on for as long as they need to carry on. I think that on this thing now they've reached the end of the road, but they've kept our resources tied up for 4 or 5 years. And that's what they do. I mean, their stories were completely unconvincing, and the dismissal of their appeal yesterday was unanimous, and the language used is in judicial terms is strong, and they had no case. You know, SASSA opposed us as well, of course.
Yeah.
And then at the last minute withdrew their opposition and essentially admitted that they could find no cogent explanation, no plausible explanation for why this money was paid. And it's now SASSA under a different leadership,
yeah.
I grant you. But this was until we were at the door of the court. They were siding with CPS in opposing us, and eventually jumped ship and left it to CPS.
So one thing that we look at is the fact that, yes, this money has to be paid back, and you're saying it's close to 500 million rand, but the bottom line is, who is held accountable? So again, it's that question mark where you're saying you have a name, we still have question marks over the former minister, SASSA illegally operated, but it still, to me, looks like everyone's going to get off scot-free and they're just going to throw money at the problem.
You know, let's see. I mean, it's not exactly scot-free. I mean, you know, a lot of money, 500 million rand is a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, but it's throwing money at a problem.
But the individuals are not held accountable.
Yeah.
And that was the magic of capturing the criminal justice system. You know, I don't know whether, you know, it was with hindsight that one of Zuma's first acts as president was to appoint Richard Mdluli to be head of crime intelligence, to disband the Scorpions at that stage. Maybe he was just protecting himself at the time, but the upshot has been precisely what you say. And so, you know, with hindsight, it appears as like a devilishly clever plot to say what we really need to do, shut down the criminal justice systems, undermine organizations like SARS, like the FIC, and you've got an open goal. And that's what what has happened, and these institutions are severely damaged, and now it's left to the new leadership, to Shamila Batoy, to Edward Kisvetter, who are people of integrity, to try and repair very, very severely damaged institutions, and they need the backing of the public in doing so, but they are under a lot of pressure, understandably, to produce some results very quickly, and I think we must, at the same time as supporting them, we must continue to exert that pressure, because it's, as you say, it's become the litmus test for the South African public, whether people go to jail or not.
This is the reality, it really is. But David, congratulations to you, and a big thanks to Corruption Watch, no doubt, for looking on and trying to instill more confidence into a sector that certainly had its fair share of problems, and let's hope that this is the start of a turnaround, and also for other companies to look in and say, well, listen, we better not engage, as you said, in these illegal activities. We will be caught out. Thank you very much for joining us here. So that was David Lewis, Executive Director of Corruption Watch, talking to us about yesterday's Supreme Court of Appeal judgment yesterday, basically ordering CPS to now pay back close on 500 million rand to SASSA after that payment was made illegally, and nobody could find out why it was made to them. All right, let's take a break.